This week, we talked to American photographer Justin Mott. Justin has been based in Vietnam for the last decade, and we discussed with him how his various business enterprises have started off the back of his photography career, how he ended up starring in Asia's biggest photo reality TV show, and about his approach to personal projects. So sit back, plug in, and enjoy. Good morning, Tom. How are you doing?
I'm all right, my friend. How are you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. I'm in a different setting today. I'm back in the studio because the builders at home got too noisy.
It's fair enough. We appreciate it. And now you're no longer riding your Harley Davidson past the window as well. It's good.
Indeed. You'll just have to deal with the mutterings of other people in the background.
Mm.
No, I haven't been in for 3 months.
How is it? Have they all looked after it? Is it a nice clean space?
Well, what do you know what it is? I've come back and I've looked at my desk and I've gone, what would Tom Barnes do?
He'd have it really messy and then tell everyone it was really clean and organised.
No, I'm in the market for absolutely sorry, sneezing in the background. I warned you. I am in the market for definitely upgrading my desk. It is
Now,
a mess.
I can talk to you about that. So for people who, there might even be listeners who've typed in photographer's desk into Google and have inadvertently seen one of my previous desk projects that was featured on Petapixel f-stoppers, DIY photography.
Tasty photo blog.
Tasty photo blog. And yeah, I have always been a huge fan of doing desks that fit you. Right?
Yeah, your last desk, the one that featured on that, was an absolute boss of a desk. So you're saying you've moved on from that?
I've upgraded. Yeah, my previous desk was hand built and up on scaffolds. So, oh no, sorry, that was up on electronic lifts. So that one was a sit stand desk, but I had it programmed to randomly just stand up from time to time to remind me to do it. So I'd be like,
to keep you on your toes.
Yeah, I'd be super into my editing. I'd be like, right, I'm just going to retouch this bit of skin. Let's go. And like, oh shit, it's coming to, oh my God. And I'd have to suddenly
they're having to ratchet your chair.
Yeah, no, I'd be like, oh God. So yeah, so that was, I gave up with that one actually. So I got a Herman Miller Aeron chair. So if you guys who don't, if you go, well, see them and then look at the price and you go, whoa, that. I don't know how much they are now, but it was like 1,100 quid for an office chair. Full disclosure, I did not buy that. I bought it off a random guy in Canary Wharf on a canal boat, and I am 99.100% sure it's hooky. But I bought it like 12 years ago, and it's still going. So definitely got my value off it. I don't know where he is now, but
I feel like it sounds like there's a great story there. Like he was living in a penthouse and now he's living on a barge. It's definitely
might will have been a barge full of hooky Herman Miller Aeron chairs. So he'd obviously got fired and then just taken all the office furniture.
But I'm definitely in the market for a new chair and then a new desk. So tell us about your desk. What's your latest desk?
So my latest desk, I had it imported from America. So this is not, so I for years have built my own desks, right? I'm quite handy with a saw, not so handy with a screwdriver, and terrible with a hammer. So I'd kind of built these things and they were out of kind of Latvian laminated birch ply, and I'd stain them and then I'd varnish them and they'd be exactly how I wanted them. So there would be like a slot for a MacBook Pro that would be ideal. And then I'd slot it in, it would automatically start charging, and like it was cool, right? But because I'm quite good at building things, I'd be like, oh, this isn't quite right. Let me build it again. And so I was spending weeks of a year building these like perfect workstations. And it was, I don't know, it just felt like maybe that time should have been spent working rather than going, no, my desk is 4 mil too high. I need to create a new one. So I changed it all about and I bought this new desk from a company called it's a studio. It's an audio studio desk,
and that's why it has all the
rack
you've got
mount
drawers on. Yeah, all these rack mounted drawers full of all your.
I found it on. It's called the Platform. That's the company, right? So it's Platform, and it is the studio desk, and it's got this kind of a riser up, so I've got like proper. I've got a fair pair of Focal Alpha 65 crazy amazing monitors. Studio reference monitors, so speakers. And then I've got my iMac Pro in the middle of it, but it's all raised up to my perfect eye height. And then I've got rack mount drawers. So I've got almost three sets of rack mount drawers. And then I've got my audio interface, and then all the cabling kind of runs through it. And maybe I should do a new blog about this because it is the nuts. But
I think people would like that.
Well, here's the thing, right? We spend so much time at our desks that they have to be perfect.
It's kind of sad, isn't it? Like if you
very
spoken
sad.
to a photographer in the kind of 50s and said, you in the future, you basically vast majority, 80% of your time is going to be sat at the desk, not in a dark room, not shooting, not kind of out on the road. It's going to be sat at the desk.
But honestly, it's so it would be terrible. They'd be like, "What do you mean? It's not the creative aspect?" You go, nah, "Not really," but it's we spend so much time at a desk. You have to make it comfortable. You have to be able to feel inspired. You have to know where all the stuff is. And for me personally, I have to be able to tuck stuff away. I hate cables and I hate mess on the desk. So I've got these lovely drawers. If I just want to, I have a dump drawer. And it sounds like I go to the toilet in it. That's not what the case is. It literally is a drawer that I open up, and just if I want to clear everything off the desk quick, I just go, gone. And then I don't need to worry about it, right? So I'll get a request. I'll be like, I need to go in and edit this picture. I want it completely clear. So
I've got this wonderful image of you just like with both arms just sweeping everything off your desk into your dump drawer.
I did it
clutter and stuff smashing.
Yeah, like just there, and then the glass smashing, all my cups, my wine glasses. Not that I drink in the office. It can be like that from time to time. I've just come back from a 3-day project, and I walked in this morning knowing that we had to record this coming interview with Justin. And I couldn't see my keyboard or tablet or anything. And I was like, oh, great. Need to do some work here. But to be honest, I think this could be an episode in itself. Not my desk, but like workspaces in general, because we spend so much time at them.
Yeah.
Health and safety. We lift huge, heavy cases, right? Without meaning to sound like dull, because it is, right? No one ever tends to take much care of their body. I want to be doing this when I'm 65, 70 years old. Maybe not 65, 70. Well, maybe I'll retire at 95. But like, I want to have like a long career. The more and more heavy, I've touched on this in previous ones when I was talking about my minimalized kit, right? Same for the work space. Like, you spend so much time sat in this chair staring at the screen. And that's why I use something, I use different things, whether they're software based or, hardware in the office. To try and kind of relieve pressure on various parts like your neck and your lower back and stuff like that. You should always have your desk chair at a 30-degree angle when you're sat in it, because that basically straightens out your hips, because the human body should never be sat down really rigid. So if you just set 30 degrees and lean slightly back, it basically takes a huge amount of pressure off your hips. I can see you trying it now.
Yeah, rocking back in my chair.
There we go. But I do things like I have like a Pomodoro timer, which I think we've talked about in the past, and I have everything in the office set on a Stream Deck. So for people who don't know what a Stream Deck is, it is a box of buttons, but each button's a little screen, right? So I have everything hooked up. I can launch apps from it. I can do all my music controls, do all the volume. I can launch, there's something else with, okay, I've got really nerdy. You probably didn't expect this level of detail from it. Apologies. But I've created system macros running in the background using a piece of software called Keyboard Maestro. And you can record actions. So if you want to quickly, I operate an inbox zero approach. And if you want to file emails quickly, you just set up a keyboard macro to move the email into the correct folder and then set it up on the Stream Deck as a shortcut. So then if I wanted to file that to receipts, or if I wanted to forward it to my accountant, or if I wanted to send that to my legal team, every single one's got a button. I just press it and bosh, it's gone. I don't even need to write the email. Probably should.
Wow.
But yeah. So everything I've managed to kind of, I was saying actually off air, my process of dealing with my accountants, for example, has gone down from maybe 3 or 4 hours a month to about 10 minutes.
Mm,
So I am
that's
all
insane.
for a beautiful workspace that you feel super comfortable and creative in, but also one that's super efficient and means you can
Y-
work faster.
I think if you saw my email inbox, you'd cry.
How many unread emails do you have in it?
Let me have a look. Hang on, because I don't have the little icon on.
Because it makes you
Mm,
cry, does it?
no, it doesn't bother me. I stopped seeing it.
Right. When you got
Yeah,
past 20,000 unread, you were like, doesn't matter, does it?
yeah, it's not too bad. It's 8,941.
Wow. That's wild. So if I told you, because I'm so strict operating in inbox zero,
Mm.
I currently have 16 emails to reply in my inbox.
And
That's
they're making
it.
you
They're
sweat.
they're all red. Yeah. Oh my god, I'm dripping. That's the lack of AC. But I run smart mailboxes. So I don't know if you use Apple Mail, but if you use Apple Mail, this is one for the listeners. If
Mm.
you use Apple Mail, you can set up smart mailboxes. So say for example, you want to run inbox zero, I have smart mailboxes set up to show all my unreplied messages for the past 3 weeks. So
Mm.
then when I reply to an email in the smart mailbox, it then moves it out of the smart, it just basically doesn't show in the smart mailbox. So I run everything out of my inbox, but then I use the smart mailboxes to selectively show me the unreplied emails. And as I reply to them, my inbox slowly becomes, my visual inbox becomes less and less and less. So I'm kind of then, if I can get down to, I tend to end the day with maybe 3 or 4, clear them before I clock off for the day, and then do the whole thing again from the start.
Wow. It's putting me
Sorry.
to shame.
It's pretty nerdy, mate. You wait until we talk about data security. That
Ooh,
that
that's
I
a whole
can't
episode in
wait.
itself.
Ooh, I can't wait to talk about data. It's my favorite thing.
For
Talk
the
about
listeners,
transfer speeds
Tom's
and bus
rubbing his hands
towels
with
and.
glee. Yeah.
I
Well,
just think things like this we never talk about as photographers, right? Like we're always
this
like,
is
oh,
true.
the image, and you kind of go, sure, I get it, right? But we're business people as well. Like there are
You
there
have
are
to run
there
a
are
tight ship. Yeah.
100%, yeah, because it can get away from you. You know,
Mm.
God forbid, you could end up with 8,000 unread emails. but
Most of them are from God knows where, like trying to sell
me.
me pills and yeah.
But
I do
no,
think I
I
just need to
totally get it.
hit the delete button and start again sometimes on those things.
I think just archive them all and then just
Yeah.
start afresh and try my method. And you'll be like, oh damn. But
Mm.
the quickly before I forget, the Pomodoro thing that I use has been amazing for my eyes because Pomodoro is it Pomodoro or I think it is Pomodoro. The technique I use, you do 25 minutes super intense hard work and then take a 5-minute break. But I have it
Mm.
set up so if I push a button on my Stream Deck, it'll set a timer for 25 minutes and then an alarm will go off telling me that it's time to take a break. Then I take a break, I go and grab a glass of water, and it means that I am not staring at my screen for 5 hours at a time.
Mm.
And it also means that I come back with fresh eyes. And
Yeah.
fresh eyes has been what I've learned, and really that's been the most important thing for me in lockdown has been realizing how quickly your eyes can become adjusted, and so you might end up editing an image and it might be like super dark, but your eyes will tell you it's not quite that dark. So then when you come back in with fresh eyes, you're like, oh, that's
Yeah.
very dark. So
Well, that's why I
now,
always like to have I do an initial edit maybe on the day of a shoot, but then
mm,
you always leave the grading, like I always come back to grading twice, if you see what I mean, if I've got the time, because
yeah,
I never just try and do it in one batch and send it out. We always want to come back a day later and actually look at it, because guarantee you've got to
exactly.
look at it and go, actually, that's pretty magenta or that's pretty whatever.
Well,
Um,
I sent out a project, and I just at the time I think I just boshed it out, and I'd not boshed it. Obviously, I'd spent a lot of time in it, but because I'd spent so much time in it, I'd spent days staring at it and hadn't really broken away from the screen. I now I've luckily been shortlisted for one of the AOP. I'm one of the finalists in the AOP awards.
oh, congratulations.
Thank you very much. But the but the pictures are the super dark edit, and I'm like, I might be a finalist there, but I'm sure as hell not going to win because unless it's just not going to happen. So I've since re-edited that project, and I'd sent
Yeah.
it to a couple of picture editors who rejected it first time because they said it was too dark. And now I've kind of gone back to them and gone, this is awesome. This is an amazing project. It's a completely different project now you've re-edited, and it's the
Mm,
fresh eyes thing for me is I've never really. I think when you've got so much going on and you've got so much to do and there's not enough time, right? You just
mm,
feel the need to just not rush, but just get things ticked off and done.
mm.
And you obviously don't. But for me now, I've built that into my workflow that I will now take the time to sit back, come back to it a few times, different times a day, fresh eyes.
Mm.
And for me, my retouch has come on leaps and bounds as a result.
Yeah. I think personally, I probably went through a period where I was pushing and pushing and pushing, and then kind of realized that actually one of the benefits of working for yourself is the fact that you can choose how to spend your time and take time off and to
Mm-hmm.
be a little bit better to yourself. And I
Mm,
think that's also important because if you do end up kind of just pushing too hard, your work suffers and
100%.
you start to get burnout. So there's a different approach, but it's a similar thing, I guess. It's like
Mm-hmm.
learning to take a break. Um,
Hugely important. And I think people know it's important, but don't want to take it. I think there's this
mm,
kind of like weird, I'm working harder than you kind of attitude still. I'm
maybe,
hoping that's not going to be the
yeah,
case, but like I've definitely kind of seen it in the past. And I used to brag about like working like 26-hour days and stuff. And now I'm like, dude, you just sound like an idiot. Like, sure, we all have to work hard, right? But like, this isn't a competition.
yeah,
Like, just chill out. Like, we all work hard. We all get it. Like, there's no photographer in the world who isn't used to working long hours.
yeah,
It's a long hour kind of job.
very
So
much so. Yeah, it's not as bad as the film industry, I don't think, but it's kind of up
no,
there.
no. But it's they definitely have their parallels for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I mean,
So
today's chat we speak to Justin, who is on the line over from Hanoi.
he's actually
Um,
been on the line waiting for us to finish this chat. He's kind of getting a bit bored of all the desk chat.
you've got the lift music playing and
Yeah.
our lobby music. Um, So yeah, and it's a really interesting chat. We talk about his kind of how he ended up in Vietnam and why he moved there, and his kind of background in photojournalism, and then he's made a very successful career now as a commercial photographer out in Vietnam, shooting everything from weddings to kind of luxury hotels. Set up a separate company to do that. Um, uses a lot of kind of drone photography and video and all sorts of. He's really kind of taken up the latest that tech has to offer, and also utilizing working with some great local talent. And then, yeah, we discuss a bit more about kind of his approach to his personal projects, and I think, and also obviously in between, we shouldn't miss the um, all the chat about his time on a reality TV show, which sounds to personally like my worst ever nightmare. But
Oh, I'd love it. I'd love it. I'd be like, everyone, look at me. I'm the star. Actually, no. To be fair, I'd absolutely hate it.
I think
But to be fair,
I think it
sounds.
probably did him good. I mean, you talk about it in terms of kind of putting yourself out there to be judged
Mm.
is tough, but at the same time, it's teaches you a lot about your work and about yourself and how you're perceived by others. So
Yeah, it definitely gives you a different perspective as well. Like I personally, I don't think I'd like to think that I've got quite a thick skin, but I don't know if I've got quite that thick a skin that
yeah,
I could put myself on international television, being like, I'm a photographer. People would be like, good. I'd be like,
yeah,
oh my god, I'd
yeah.
be crying, all sorts.
It's quite gladiatorial, isn't it? Kind of
Yeah, it
be
is.
there at the
You're
mercy
kind
of
of
the
waiting for
crowd.
the emperor to kind of give you thumbs up, thumbs down. You're like, oh god. The ratings come in, and you're like, oh damn. Okay, I need to be nicer in the next episode. But
Well,
he's a bloody nice chap. I'm
yeah,
very glad he came on. And Justin, thank you very much for taking the time. Um, he'll not answer. We'll go straight
no.
into it. I might cut this bit from the intro, but yeah, he's a super interesting chap and lovely house.
Well, we'd like to welcome this week Mr. Justin Mott to the show, who is a US or born photographer, but Vietnam based photographer. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank
How
you.
you doing?
I'm doing very well here in Vietnam. We're back open for business and things are going quite well.
Very nice.
So you've been in Vietnam for how many years now?
I've been here. If Vietnamese people ask me, I say under 10 years because my language skills are horrible. If other people ask me, for the record, yeah, I've officially been here for about 13, 14 years now.
Mhm.
Long
Wow.
time.
Okay. So you moved there from. Tell us a bit about kind of what took you to Vietnam in the first place, and a bit about your background. So you studied photography in San Francisco, is that
I
right?
did, yeah. I studied photojournalism in San Francisco at San Francisco State. A little bit later in life, I was in my mid 20s. I had about 1 year left of school left, and before I graduated, I wanted to take a trip. I saved up some money. My father had passed away. I wanted to like just sort of have a little time to myself. I was bartending in the city, living paycheck to paycheck, paying my way through school, and I just needed a break. So I came out to Vietnam for a few months. This bartender I'd worked with had fought in the war, and he was a big fan of Vietnam. He'd always bring in these clippings for the New York Times, and yeah, sort of full circle. It was funny. I always wanted to work for the New York Times, and he was from New York. We bartended in San Francisco together, and he would always bring in these articles about Vietnam, and he loved it. After he fought in the war, and he's like, "You have to go visit." So I came out here with my camera, looking to just sort of wander around, travel a bit, maybe a little bit like a backpacker, but I wanted to work on some stories as well.
Mhm.
And I fell in love with the country, and essentially, I never really came back after that. I had about a year left of school. I never really graduated. I went back and forth for a few years after that. I started a project about victims of Agent Orange here.
Mhm.
That led me to getting into Eddie Adams' workshop in the United States and the Missouri Photo Workshop. Those two workshops had a big impact on my life, introduced me to a lot of editors, did a lot of networking. And then I came back out to Vietnam to work on some more projects, and I got an assignment for the New York Times. And before I knew it, I was getting work for them, and I didn't want to lose my spot because you never know. You like to think you get in because of talent, but sometimes you get in because a little talent and a little luck and a little bit of persistence. I was going to New York and I was shopping my work around, but I didn't want to lose my spot here, and I was getting a lot of assignment work for them. So I never really looked back. It's funny because school really had taught me to follow the system in America where you go to do all these internships at these mid-sized papers and then a larger paper and then maybe you get a staff job. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to leave the country, and I found myself quite interested in Vietnam and yeah, and inspired. So I never really turned back, and I got quite lucky to get that first assignment, and that turned into a ton of assignments all throughout the region.
What Going back briefly to the Eddie Adams and the Missouri workshops, when you say that they taught you a lot, I've heard a lot of people that have gone to the Eddie Adams workshop over the years. I know that Dan Winters and photographers like that kind of went, and it's a real amazing alumni of people that have gone through that workshop system. What would you say was your kind of your takeaways from that in terms of you said it taught you a lot. Did
Yeah.
it reframe the way you thought about photography or your approach to photography?
Well, actually, I did three workshops around a similar time, and all three had a different effect on me. I did a Gary Knight workshop, who was a photographer for Seven, quite a famous conflict photographer. I did his workshop, which I couldn't afford. I think I'm past the statute of limitations there. He gave me a deal. He told me never to tell anybody. He gave me a student discount. I did his workshop in
Sorry,
Cambodia.
Gary.
Yeah. I did his workshop in Cambodia. I would say his had the biggest impact on me, which is different. But because we did a story in Cambodia for about a full week, and he really taught me. He taught me that I wasn't good when I was at school, and I got into Eddie Adams, and I got into the Missouri workshop. I won some awards, and I got a scholarship into the Missouri workshop. So I guess I was considered good for getting into those, and I thought I was pretty good. I'm never cocky in that way, but when I went out to that workshop with Gary, I realized I wasn't good. I was horrible, and I didn't really know how to tell a story with my photos. And I think there was 10 people in that workshop, and I was the worst one. And and so that his workshop taught me a lot. He kind of kicked my butt. And the Eddie
Mhm.
Adams workshop was really good for networking. That was great. That taught me that I had to network. I had to make those trips to New York to meet these editors. I had to, get my face out there, get my work out there, and really just sort of establish myself. Like, who am I? So I was like, okay, I at least had a clear message. Because I was a little bit older in life. I could say, well, I'm the guy in Vietnam. So that was my message. I could do assignment work. I'm reliable, and here I am in Southeast Asia. And the Missouri Photo Workshop was a combination of doing a story, which was great. And I worked with Marion Golan, she was the editor at Time Magazine, and then now she's the editor at the Washington Post. And she really helped my career a lot too, getting me assignments. And that was another way just to gauge myself too outside of my school system, where I stood amongst other American photographers, not just San Francisco State and the Bay Area. So each workshop had a different effect on me, but I would say the biggest one was Eddie Adams was great for connections. I wouldn't say I learned a lot because it's such a short workshop. It's great for networking, but it's so quick. It's very competitive. It was a little bit nasty too, I have to admit. It was like people were really pushy to try to get ahead. I didn't like that feeling at all in America. Kind of stabbing each other in the back, trying to make each other make other people look bad, and I really didn't like it. And so part of that was, you're making me think about this on the spot because it's actually part of that was probably a reason why I left the United States, because I didn't really like that competitiveness within the country. When I came to Vietnam, the other photographers were so friendly to me. We just wanted to share and if someone had an idea of something to photograph, you would share the idea and you'd help the other photographer and you'd share work. Whereas Eddie Adams was quite very competitive, very petty, and there was some pretty nasty people there, nudging people out of the way to get to talk to editors. And I don't really operate that way, and I don't like working that way, so I didn't enjoy that at all.
It seems to be a kind of photojournalism a trait in a weird way. The kind of slightly alpha kind of. I had a similar experience of kind of seeing photographers in the field kind of behaving in a way that I thought was kind of unethical or overly. I don't know. Maybe that's part of it.
I don't even know if it's just photojournalists. I think that might just be the bulk of photographers in general. I think one of the reasons we started this podcast is to just chat to like-minded people, right, and have a nice time chatting amongst photographers. The amount of animosity that I've encountered in my career from all my different kind of guises, it's I don't know. I just think there's almost this weird kind of, I don't know, people are like, I'm not going to share that because that's mine, and I'm going to get that, and it's like I don't know, photographers can be quite nasty, and don't get me wrong, I know it's competitive, right, but there's being competitive and nice, and then there's being competitive and a bit of an arse.
I found also the more work you do in photography, because I started as a pure sort of photojournalist, and I found that as I started to expand into other genres of photography, I found that no one, each group didn't want to claim you. Commercial photographers like, oh, you're not one of us, and photojournalists like, you're not one of us. And then I did weddings, and I still have I don't shoot weddings anymore, but I have a wedding photography business that I run with my wife, and then people will, oh, you're not a wedding photographer, or the documentary people, you're a wedding photographer, you're not one of us. It's odd and petty, and I didn't like that. With me, I just try to make a living in my career, and I like all things photography. I like all the challenges. So I found that kind of funny.
Is there a particular way you would describe yourself if you were going to try and put yourself in one of those boxes?
Yeah, I would say for me, there's a consistent theme with all of my photography, and I think it's sort of natural light and natural moments, and even my commercial work. When I got into that, I said, well, I want to do this on my terms, and I think it's something different. I saw the way other people did hotel photography, and it's interesting, and it's a lot of lighting and a lot of retouching, and I thought, well, that's not my forte. I can get better at it, but it's not what I love to do, and I think I can provide a different style. So I kind of used my background and all that work I did with personal projects and documentary photography and applied it to weddings. And then I applied it to commercial photography. And, it was good because it was such a natural progression for me. And I think it's a genuine thing when I could talk to clients, and I think they really appreciate that. And then when I expanded into video, I also know my limitations. Like I know when it came to video, okay, I can learn a certain amount of this and I understand a certain amount. I can co-direct, but I partnered up with some great cinematographers and other directors and brought them under my brand, and sort of work with people that can provide something that I'm not good at and don't necessarily want to get good at. The same with retouching. I can do a certain amount, but there's a level where I know I'm not good enough at it. I think that's important to grow as a photographer. Some people are really smart and can pick up on that stuff and they want to learn it. I know what I'm good at. I know my strengths and I know my weaknesses. And I think that's really helped me in my career.
Yeah, 100%. Knowing when to bring people in, it will obviously end up delivering a better product in the end as well. With the thing you just talked about, I've completely lost what I was going to say. Sorry. I was so pleased with myself. Oh dear, terrible. What was I going to say?
We were discussing the collaborating with cinematographers and co-directing and
right. Yeah, that was it. So what I was going to say was you've obviously split your business over two brands. You've got justinmott.com and then Mott Visuals. For obviously your photojournalist and your commercial work. What was the kind of the logic between splitting it? Was it so that neither of them got diluted?
Yeah, well, for me, what happened was I used to sort of keep it all together on sort of one homepage, and it was I didn't have enough work for all the commercial work when I first started, so I would just kind of leave that, and it was tricky to figure out what my identity was going to be, but it was another example of collaborating with somebody. I really worked with this great branding team, these two friends of mine who I made one of those agreements with them where I couldn't afford them. I was just starting my commercial work, and I met them I met them at a New York Times writers house in Bangkok, and they were passing through, and they were both they did brand identity, and I had a great conversation with the two of them. They worked in New York. They worked for a big advertising firm, and they were just breaking off and starting their own firm. And they really helped me brand not just my logo and all my collateral, but they really helped me talk through my business plan and what I was trying to accomplish. And they helped me a lot. Again, I couldn't afford them, but I promised to shoot their wedding in South Dakota. He said, I'm going to propose in another year or two. And it was really nice and genuine. Like over a bunch of glasses of wine, he just kind of trusted me and I trusted them. And then he said, listen, you shoot my wedding. You pay for everything. Come here and do it. I'll just keep helping you with the branding as much as you need. So it was great. And then years later, he proposed and I flew to South Dakota and shot his wedding. But he helped me think about, okay, let's separate these brands. Let's you don't want your editorial clients necessarily seeing that kind of stuff because I wasn't doing that crossover editorial stuff. I was doing really like assignment stuff, New York Times, like newspaper stuff and magazine work.
Sure.
So, so I started a separate brand, and then that grew into production. I brought my wife on board, who worked a lot in production in Vietnam, and she handles models and wardrobe and a lot of stuff that again I'm not good at. That'll be a common theme. I'm not really good at anything. I'm decent at taking pictures. That's it. So I supported myself by a great team, and it keeps us busy. But I separated those brands, because I did find that they were both. When I got to a point where I felt they were both strong enough to stand on their own, I sort of separated the two brands. And there is crossover. Some people find me the wrong way, but they eventually find the right website and where to look. But it is totally different work, and especially now since I started my personal project where I have a lot of sort of wildlife photojournalism on there, it's completely different than my hotel stuff. But yeah, it was a matter of building up these two brands. I mean, even have another brand that I don't put my name on that we're working here at a local studio that my wife's sort of name's on, and I help with that behind the scenes too. So it's kind of I like business, so I started the commercial work really because the editorial work was so inconsistent out here. When you're a photographer living in Vietnam, you never know. I mean, it's not necessarily a hot spot for the news often. So, and then budgets got smaller, so the trips to Vietnam, I would travel outside of Vietnam quite a bit. I was quite honored to get those kind of assignments where I'd travel a bit, but then as budget shrank, I was stuck to do more stuff in Vietnam and less magazines, less newspapers, more competition. And so I thought, well, I want to keep working. I like to work and I like to hustle. So that's where I really grew into the commercial work because I just sort of noticed an opening there as well.
And with your kind of approach to the photojournalism, I mean, it's a lot more the classic. I love your work that you do for the New York Times and the travel work because it's got that kind of real, authentic feel to it, and your approach is a lot more simplified and pared back. How did it? I'm also interested in because to continue to produce work like that, you have to be willing to kind of keep your eyes open to a certain way of seeing the world, to not getting too jaded, to continuing to. It's a creative form of photography. It's a very creative form of photography. Like when I look at your travel work, it's not some prosaic paint by numbers travel photography that you sometimes see. And so I guess what I'm trying to get at is how do you maintain that excitement about going out there and shooting in that particular way? And I kind of want to bring it on a little bit to Photo Face Off, which was for listeners in the Europe and the US, they might not have. It was on the History Channel, right? So tell us a bit about
history. Well, first of all, thank you for saying that about my travel work. That means a lot to me. I guess I'd stay fresh. To answer the first question, I stayed fresh by, even though I wasn't doing as much of the new stuff, because what happened with me was a catch-22. I started getting so much. I had a lot of work for doing. I started getting a lot of commercial work because the editorial work was dying down, and I started focusing on commercial work. But then, as the editorial work picked back up again, I was always booked up to do commercial work and editorial. New York Times editors, I don't mean much to them. I've worked for them for years, but really, they'll after a bit, I don't blame them. You say no on a bunch of shoots, they're going to find somebody else, and they would. So, that would happen to me a lot from the foreign desk. But then the travel desk, you'd have a little more time to plan. So I would always have these jobs for the foreign desk, like doing different travel assignments. So that kept me fresh. And being a photographer in Vietnam, you get so many weird and odd requests from so many random magazines from like Germany or France or Vietnam or wherever. You just get so many odd requests. So I'm always doing something quite different here. And I always thought I would stay fresh by doing personal projects. But to lead you to Photo Face Off is Photo Face Off ended up eating into a lot of my time with personal projects. And that came about by Photo Face Off was a show on History Channel. It was a reality show. It was basically pinning amateur photographers against myself. The first year of the show, I didn't even realize that I was like the face of the show. I think it just kind of happened throughout the season. I thought like, I know this is a podcast, but I definitely have a face for radio. Like, you really want me as the show? It was kind of funny, actually. So my friend works in production, and he's like, listen, I recommended you because you shoot everything. And I thought this would be a great show for you. So History Channel wanted to do a reality show based on Canon Photo Marathon, which is not a big thing in Europe or the US, but it's huge in Southeast Asia. It's this competition that Canon runs once a year. They have basically, it's their biggest event in the entire year. So Vietnam, they might get 3,000 people come to this giant stadium in Ho Chi Minh City. Then they do another one in Hanoi, another one in Da Nang, but they do it in Jakarta and Bangkok, all over, in Singapore. So they wanted to base this TV show on that. So they give out these different themes throughout the day. The photographers have to go out and shoot it, and then you judge them, and then the winners get these great prizes. So the idea of this show was, well, okay, we're going to put a professional photographer, myself, up against these amateurs, and then they can, if they beat me, they get a bonus prize. And then the show evolved into, I judge them the entire episode, and then the final contestant that wins their country moves on to like this final challenge. But at the end of each episode, they get a chance to beat me. So I was kind of the jerk I was kind of mean. Like, I'm not a mean person. I don't think I am. I guess nobody thinks they are, but I think I'm pretty kind and pretty giving in my photography advice. But the show, I just sort of transformed into like this, because everyone was so sweet on the show, all the contestants, that I had to be mean to create drama. And so I turned into kind of a jerk, and I used to make people cry. And like, I made like a 15-year-old girl cry on camera, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. And you know what was funny? It would be like all of the stuff I always want to say about photographs. It was like, open the floodgates just to do it. I know you have opinions. I'm like, I do, but I usually just keep those to myself or my inner circle over a beer or something.
Right.
So all the nasty things I always wanted to say about photography, cliches and bad photographs, I just basically decided this would be good television if I just let it out. And it was funny because then I'd meet people, and I'd meet people for events for Canon, because it became really a big thing in my life. I would film in 6 or 7 countries a year, and we'd film for a couple months, and then I would go on tour later in the year to promote the show throughout the region and do all these events and all these Canon photo marathons, and then the PR events for the show. It was exhausting. I'd say the first 3 years were fun, and the last 2 years were kind of like, I'm done with this, because it really did take away from my personal work.
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing posters of you, kind of larger than life.
I was going to put one behind me. We do have one in the office that my staff is like, we used to have like 4 of them, and then we threw them all away. I'm like, we're going to keep one, because I always want to remember this.
But would you say that it taught you anything in terms of, because obviously there's something quite interesting about, most working photographers don't end up pitting themselves against others in the way that you might do if you were studying photography and you have a photo critique going on.
Yeah.
And suddenly you're kind of, you're midway through your career, you're doing fine, and then suddenly you're thrust back into this kind of spotlight where you're, as you said, you're having to perform to camera, and you have to be a little bit of a pantomime villain at times, whatever. But at the same time, you're also genuinely having to go out and shoot stuff and then be judged for it, and be expected to be like pretty shit hot because you're the judge on the show as well. I mean, the pressure must have been quite a lot at times. But did you feel like you benefited from that? Did you learn? Did you kind of develop? Did it force you to like think differently about the type of pictures you took? Or
it forced me to be analytical about photography again, which I hadn't been in a long time. In college, we were really taught to, a picture goes up, we all break it down. We'll talk about a story, but an individual picture as well. We'll really go through it all, talking about everything, light, creativity, and how it like fit if you had a brief from a commercial client, and really analyzing a photograph, which I hadn't done in years, really, because photography, you start as a group and then you end up in isolation, really. You end up working alone and on your own often. So that was fun for me to reconnect with that. It was fun for me to reconnect with people. I do like teaching photography, but one thing it did teach me is, that audience wasn't the right audience for me, and it in a way that was, the people
Well, it's
that
quite a broad audience, isn't
yeah,
it?
it was. And
So,
the people that participate on the show, they were all very nice people, but a lot of them just want to win. There's a whole culture out there in Asia that I didn't know really existed about like photography competitions. And it is a big thing. And I didn't really know that much about it. And so people would want to just win competitions with their photography. But I was always trying to preach like about how you find yourself as a photographer and don't give yourself credit for mimicking someone else and recreating their shot. Give yourself credit when you've come up with your own identity and your own style and you're growing as a photographer. So I was always at odds with these two things because they were like, I'd do these events with Canon, like, okay, teach me how to, you got that shot. Let me copy it. I'm like, no, that's all wrong. Don't do that. And then I would be judged for like, if I tried to do something creative, like, no, just to get the shot that everyone thinks you're going to get. I'm like, no. So I would lose the competition sometimes because I was being like maybe too snobby, because, and then I'm judging them and they're losing the people that like everyone else is like, why did you pick that person? It's like, because that person was so unique and they were individual and they grew within this episode and they tried something different and they didn't get the same shot as everyone else. And, so I was always at odds with that group. And even in my teachings in photography, when I would do these events, I was like, I'd be talking to thousands of people, but there'd only be like 5 people that were really my people. They were like, all right, I get what you're saying. Everyone else is like, we don't care about that stuff, developing a story. We're not going to spend a month or a year on a story. We just want to know how to win a photography competition. So yeah, and that dragged on. It was fun. What was great though is just to be able to share the love for photography with everyone. I really like that about the show is talking it through with people, seeing people that wanted to get started, seeing a lot of younger people, but older people that like to do it just on the weekends or whenever they could for fun. So it was fun to connect with like-minded people, and it was a unique experience for me. I didn't have any experience in television, and yeah, like I said, even the first year, I was just so stupid and low self-esteem. I didn't even think I was the face of the show. And then they started promoting it and I had my face on a bus and cardboard cutouts. And I was like, oh, I'm the guy here. This is cool. and I enjoyed it because I used to be, it was a nice change for me. It was one of those things that like gave me a pit in my stomach. And I always find that those experiences when you go for it instead of turning away from it, because it was scary to be like, I didn't know how to do lines on a show. And I learned that I'm very good on the fly and not remembering lines. I can't remember lines at all. So they let me be me, and I became myself, like a meaner version of myself. But it was a lot of fun. And I'd say I was mean, but behind the scenes, I would always talk to the contestants and explain that it was just for TV. And yes, I did like their photo, but it didn't mean that they were bad photographers.
But I find it interesting how you've obviously kind of kept some of that now with the audience that you kind of grew from that in terms of on social media. What I love about your on your Instagram, you quite often have these photo A or photo B, and you kind of put it out there, and you're very kind of open to putting it out there and getting feedback from your audience to be like which picture works better, which picture do you prefer. Do you find that feedback is do you often agree with it, or do you get feedback back and go, oh my God, they don't know what they're talking about?
I don't do, for in the beginning, I don't do it for me. I do it to start a debate because I like the discussion. That's what I took away from the show was it was nice to talk about photos, and it's nice to see what other people think. And I think even in the commercial photography world, I do it mainly for my editorial work, but in the commercial photography world, it's nice for people to understand, like your clients might have a different perspective. So you should be able to explain why you like this photo, why you like that photo better, and what are the difference between the two, and understand their side of it as well. So for me, it's fun to just see the dialogue. There's always one person that says neither, which I'm like, come on, really? Which photo A or B? There's always one jerk. And it's like, I think that's my penance for being a jerk on the show. There's always one person that's neither.
The same person you put down. I'm trolling you.
Is it?
I'm surprised. Yeah, no, I'm surprised you've not blocked me.
But no, I would say it's less for me, but I do appreciate the feedback, and I do like to hear people talk it through, and it's fun. It's like one of those things that I started when I started this other sort of brand while I was doing the show of photography tips, and that's one of the few things that really stayed with me. I was like, okay, some of this is me, but some of it isn't. But that little bit was me. People like it, people comment, and people like to engage. So it's fun. I do it every single Monday on my Instagram, and now I make it all about my personal project. So I use images from that, and it is fun. I'm very surprised at some people's opinions. Even photographers that I know quite well have a way different opinion. Photographers that I respect, and people that aren't into photography as much, but they really break down an image well. It's fun to hear different people's opinions, and I do get a kick out of it. At Monday night, I post it Monday morning, and Monday night I usually look through all of them, and it's fun to see. And I'm not. It's not always what I think. It's probably often the shot that I like the least is the one that everyone else likes the most. The mass audience.
Yeah, I guess it's not really intellectualizing, but it is that thing of debating photography is actually kind of rare for a lot of people who are working as photographers, because as you said, we're so used to kind of being quite solitary that you never, well, not never, but it's rare that you might sit down and actually go, why does this picture work better than
Yeah.
that? I mean, we had a great discussion a few weeks ago with a photo director, and there's a photo director that I personally have worked with, and it was he's fantastic in the sense that he gives you feedback and you do a job, and we were saying how rare that is nowadays to
So
get
rare.
feedback, to somebody saying, why this worked and why this didn't work and why this could be slightly improved. It's difficult to actually get that, and you need that to be able to grow and to keep improving. And
I agree 100%.
I wonder where people go to get that moving forward. And that's why I picked up on what you do on Instagram, because I think that could be a great resource. And I've not seen anyone else really doing it online. I'm sure there are people doing it on Instagram, but I've not seen other people doing that and using the platform for that.
I think photographers are fragile by nature. They're afraid to put their work out there. I think I was lucky to go to a school where you couldn't be fragile. My teacher was quite aggressive with us. I mean, in a good way. He would just make you put your work out there, make you defend it, make you talk about it, let other people attack your work, and then doing the TV show also helped too, because I'm having like the judge that I'm working with, and then he or she is judging my work after that, and then you have going up against an amateur. So I'm competitive, but at the same time, like I can defend my work. I'm okay with that, and I like the debate. And I think it's important. But I think it's also brings you. It's a good point, Greg, too, because it also makes you think of, like, I know so many photographers, and myself included, that are really bad editors of their own work. Like and a lot of photographers are afraid to share with other people. Like, you are in school, which is a normal process, right? But then afterwards you become like, okay, I run my own business, and people don't want to share as much anymore. But you really need that. Like, I just hosted a little party at a little like photographers getaway at my house right before the coronavirus hit here and people could travel, where about 4 of my photography buddies all hung out. We all shared our personal work, and it like, we're all in the same area, but we're past the point where we're competing. We're in the same region, but we're not really competing with each other. We're friends, and we all benefited from that. Like, just putting our work out there, sharing it, throwing out, because you miss stuff. And that's why I like, on my personal work, I like to work with an editor to help me out, because I miss stuff. In your own work, you're always going to miss stuff, and you could really benefit from editor. And assignment work, you don't get that anymore. At least I don't. Like, I'm living in Vietnam. My editors, I'll get the front page after I'll bust my butt to get access to something, and then I'll just get an editor's like, okay, got the photos. And like, man, how hard it was to get that visa, to work with this fixer, to get access to that, garment place in Bangladesh. And it's like, yeah, got them. You don't get any feedback whether they liked them or, back earlier when I first started, I did have good editors who I stay in touch with, who would call me and we could talk it through, because, every point in my career I want to improve. So the editors are essentially my bosses here. So I'd like their feedback, but no one has time for that anymore. So you can turn to your friends sometimes, or even your own personal project. I always recommend having an outside editor that can help you go through your stuff.
This is it, right? No one's got the time. It does feel like as kind of digital has become the main kind of outlet, that just the time for people has just gone. And I know budgets are shrinking. I know crews and kind of the numbers of staff are shrinking. So I think people are finding themselves under more and more pressure. I was going to say, I don't know if it's the same for you guys in Hanoi, but in London, there is something that I go to every year called Photo Meet. And you basically, you can book in slots with, loads of different photo editors and stuff. And I know it's not the same, right? It's not the same as having someone who you work with regularly who'll go, dude, that shoot was a bit shit. And the reason it was X, Y, and Z. Please be careful for next time. With these guys, though, they'll go through your book and they'll go, this is the strongest part of your work. This is where you want to be aiming. This is good. This is crap. This doesn't work because of this. And I find those things like hugely beneficial. But trying to get that outside of those times is becoming, near on impossible.
It is. That's why even my personal work, I hire an editor I used to work with who I really respect a lot of. I like his opinion. He was one of the editors when I had assignments, would give me great feedback. And that was a rare thing. So now I just said, listen, he wasn't even doing this as a service. I went to him like, can I pay you to edit each chapter of my project? Because I need a second set of eyes in this. And I also need an editor's perspective, not necessarily just another fellow photographer's perspective, because there are a lot of biases built in with your friends and who know you well and they know your work. So I like someone a little bit removed and someone that looks at photos in that perspective as an editor. So not everyone can afford to do that. I understand that, and especially if you're just starting out. But I found like there are people that will do it if you approach them. So I approach this editor, and it's been a huge help because I miss stuff all the time. It's little nuances. It's like, it's almost like the photo debate, Greg. It's like, well, I have these photos that are very similar, and I was maybe leaning one way, and then we have a talk about which one and why, and then sequencing the story as well, like how you're starting and how many photos and all that stuff. It's like, yeah, I miss that. And so I get it from friends without paying, and then I also pay someone to also help me do it on my personal project.
It's funny because I kind of feel that photographers are kind of some are better than others, right? But some will just look at it and go, yeah, that photo is cool, but they'll look at it from like a technical aspect of it. And so I think we all kind of analyze each other's work. I personally, from a technical aspect, that's how I look at photos first, right? Rather than like the general aesthetic and feel. I kind of get to that bit later on after I've spent some time with the image. But I know I've asked photographers for some feedback, and they're like, "Oh, I wouldn't have positioned the octobox there." You kind of go, that's not quite what I was after.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's what I get. Well, it's the way I look at it too. Yeah, it's like going to a trainer, right? I don't want to go to a trainer who's going to tell me I look great when I have a giant stomach and I'm out of shape. I need the trainer who's going to kick my butt and get me out there, make me work, and tell me what I did wrong, and tell me that I'm fat and need to get back in shape.
Right. You want a trainer to beat you up, basically.
Right. Absolutely. And that's what a good editor will do, and not just for the sake of it, but just, a different perspective is what I'm after. And then also, yeah, again, like when you put your work online, you never know what sort of mode they're in, right? They could just be browsing, they comment something quick, but like it's someone you know and trust. It's quite an intimate process if it's a personal project, especially for me. It's like I really, it's not that I'm sensitive, but I just need, like, I want someone to know me, and I want to be able to have a deep talk about the work, what I'm trying to accomplish, and then judge me on that, just not based on just like, cookie cutter responses that you learn in school. So that's what I do get from this editor, which is nice.
Nice. Yeah, no, that's invaluable, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
So this tell us a bit more then about this personal project you've started working on, this Kindred Guardians. When did you start working on this, and how did it kind of come about?
I started this project about a year ago, and I'm one of the photographers that's guilty of like having ideas for personal projects all the time, but never getting around to it. And I do travel a lot, and I have worked a lot for a decade. I've been really crazy going. I probably travel 3 weeks out of the month, and when I get back, I'm editing. So I haven't had time to work on anything personal. And it's always been in the back of my head, like I really miss doing this kind of work. I want to see where I'm at as a storyteller, as a documentary photographer, because I just hadn't done it in 10 years, but I have all these new skills from my commercial work and from my assignment work. But I haven't really developed much. Every time you go on these assignments or you do these commercial shoots, you're essentially just kind of shooting what you know. Sure, you grow in between, but I haven't had a lot of time to really grow in between. I'm paid to do what I've already done. So I haven't really grown a lot, and I missed that. So I kept saying I was going to do a project, and the television show would get in the way, and I was exhausted because, that ate up a lot of my time. And then finally the show was towards the end, and it was going to end. I was almost not going to do the last season. And I tried to get out of it because I was so burnt out, but then they were nice and they were good people, and it was a fun experience. So I did that one last season, and then I left, and then I said, okay, I really got to get this project started. I had just turned 40 years old, and I don't really have a legacy project. My last major project was something I did to get into Eddie Adams. So that's, I have worked on this other project in Vietnam a little bit, but nothing like really, really heavy, nothing deep. And I've had this love for animals. And I really wanted to get into sort of this conservation photography, wildlife photojournalism. I've always wanted to do that. It's one of those things. Well, I'm not going to get assignments to do that because there's not a lot of that in Vietnam, and I don't have the work of that. So I thought, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to set aside time, and I'm just going to set aside a budget and do it. So I had this idea to photograph like people that help animals. That was basically the core of it. So it's like people that help animals in need all around the world. And I wanted to start with something really big, and I saw the story that Nat Geo did about Sudan, the last male northern white rhino that passed away, and I thought, well, the story with the last female northern white rhinos left, and I thought that'd be a great place to start. And National Geographic did it, and people said, well, someone else has already done the story. I'm like, well, yeah, someone's already done everything. And for me, this was just like one part that I'm going to do and grow this into a larger body of work. And I've always romanticized about doing a book. And so book and legacy project coming together, like, I'm just going to make this happen. I'm going to use my money. Well, first, before all this, I had to clear with my wife, and she said fine. And then then she'll make me do these jobs that I don't always want to do, and she'll say, yeah, but that's going to get you to Kenya, or that's going to get you to Austria, or something. So she's very supportive. And I thought, listen, I'm just going to start it. I'm going to launch it. And I'm one of those people that, like, once I go in, I'm in, and I'm going to announce it to the world so that I hold myself responsible for it. So I started a whole section on my website. I made a logo, had my friends who helped me with the logo. I'm like, I'm just going to do it so that I have to do it. And I know I love it, and I know I want to grow into this. But it was scary for me because, animal abuse and animal stories and illegal wildlife trade, I'd done stories like this in the past. They make me angry. They make me emotional. And so I've kind of hidden from that in my career because it's one of those things that, like, I was a little bit of a coward with it. And then as I got older, I'm like, I need to address this. I need to go after this stuff. This is why I got into photography, to go after stories like this, to have, whatever impact I can have, and just to do meaningful stories. So I started with that project. That really, what a way to kick it off, because the first time I'd ever photographed a rhino was actually a severed rhino horn in Vietnam, doing a story on the rhino horn trade in Vietnam. I photographed a mafia guy, black market mafia dealer, who was dealing rhino horn. And then there I am, like almost a decade later, photographing a real rhino who's, two rhinos that are about to go extinct, the subspecies, the northern white rhino. So it's a very powerful moment for me. That kicked it off. I've done 6 chapters since then. The coronavirus has slowed things down. I was supposed to be in March. I was supposed to be in Austria to do a story about a turtle breeder. I have all these great stories lined up, and it's great. Like, I'm very lucky that I'm in a situation where financially I just go after these stories. I do the stories. I get access to them if I can. I need a certain kind of access. I need to be able to get close. I'm not a wildlife photographer. I'm not going with long lenses or anything like that. And so people have just been wonderful. And then I give everyone the images. I know photographers don't like that, but these are stories that they didn't ask me to come there. So I give the organizations, give the individuals the pictures. I try to sell the stories afterwards to publications. The Washington Post and Greenpeace have published quite a bit of the stories, so that's been very nice. But I definitely lose money on the project, but I've absolutely it sort of ignited me again in my photography, and I haven't been happier in my photography in a decade. So I'm really truly in love with doing this project, and I can't see it ending. Like, I can see doing it in different, like, volumes, but I'm like born to do this. I figured it out, and I'm very, very lucky to have found this, and it's fun to do it on my terms as well.
I think it's fascinating as well that with your approach to this, you've kind of pared back the way you work as well. I mean, it goes back to your kind of photojournalism roots. And am I right in thinking that for a lot of these, I mean, there's a real intimacy to the work, and if anyone who hasn't seen it, then obviously they should head along to your website, your Instagram, and we'll give that out at the end of the show.
Thank you.
And there's a real intimacy to the way you shoot it, and I think part of that's your approach to it. It's all natural light. It's very fly on the wall. It's classic documentary photography, really. But you started shooting the Leica M10D. Is that correct?
I did. Yeah, it is. That was a conscious change. I've been shooting with my commercial work, a lot of gear, traveling with a ton of gear, doing video work, and that's great for that. And even my assignment work, I was traveling with a bunch of cameras. 2 Canons, all the lenses you can kind of imagine, all the prime lenses. And getting back to this project was me getting back to where I started photography, which when I did start, I had a Leica M6, a film camera. And then I traveled for maybe my first year of assignments. I worked with a 35 millimeter and the original 5D, which is a great camera. I love that camera. I still have my dead body of it somewhere. The shell of it fell in the water at some point. But I missed that. I missed traveling light. I missed being able to move around. And more importantly, I also, like, on all my assignments and all my work, I never have time, really. Like, New York Times, they try to give you a good amount of time, but I'll get hired to shoot 2 days and I'll stay a third day because I don't have the story on my own time, because you can never really get it within that time frame. So this was like, okay, what could I get if I can slow everything down and think, and not just I need to get, okay, these amount of shots for the layout, this can tell the whole story, this is for online. And it was just so rushed. I was such a robot with that stuff. I think I was very efficient, but I really missed what I started in, which was like, oh, I can find this story. I can be open to, even within the project or within a story, it can change a little bit. I want to allow myself time for that. I want to have minimal gear. I want to be able to think a lot and really observe a lot and wait. Like I never have time to be patient anymore. It's always like, okay, I got to do this, and then I got to go here, and so that for me. That's why I chose the Leica. I looked at it. I thought, this is kind of odd. This M10D is a camera without a screen. It was like, it is kind of where I started in photography, because I did have a Leica M6, but I also, even before that, I would get my stuff processed at school. So I didn't actually do my own processing of my film. So I'm a weird sort of in between person. Like I've had this camera that I could shoot without looking at it, but I didn't process it myself. And it's kind of like what the M10D is, right? I'm looking at it. I'm not looking at my pictures, and then I'm processing it myself on my laptop. So I did like that I could be in the moment quite a bit. I was preaching that a lot on my television show. So back to what you said before, Greg, is like, if I did learn something from that, it was to remember to stay in the moment, not be distracted. I didn't like having my phone around, checking that all the time, being tethered to that in a lot of ways, and missing things, and not being present and having conversations with the people I'm photographing, or just observing and thinking and allowing myself to have my own thoughts in that time. So for me, it was all about slowing everything down. So I invested in that system. First, I tried it out for a couple of days in Singapore. Leica Singapore was nice enough to let me borrow it, and I fell in love with it, and I've been using it ever since. And I was scared of my skills. Like, am I still able to do all this? Like my exposure and manual focus. I am photographing wildlife, so certain things are easier than others. Like I photographed gibbons, and that was a real challenge. I photographed sloths. That was a lot easier.
And so none of them have run off with your camera yet and taken a selfie.
No.
Do sloths run?
Yeah, true.
Nope. You have a lot of time with the sloth to think, a lot of time to get your settings right. Everything is fine with the sloth. So I have really minimized my kit now, and I really, really enjoy it. I think it would be hard to go back. And I even have done several assignments now with this kit, and I'm very comfortable with it. So I did an assignment for the Smithsonian in Myanmar, and I brought the same kit, and it was like, okay, yeah, I can do this. And I felt like it was better than if I had done it with all my gear, because again, I was just thinking more, and I was a lot more present. It's cliche. I know a lot of people say that, but I really do believe it, and it does actually work for me.
100% agree with that, really. I mean, I was on a shoot yesterday or day before yesterday, and we were shooting tethered. It was an editorial, and I try not to shoot tethered on editorial that much, but obviously when you're using a lot of lighting and what have you, it's sometimes beneficial. But I do find that it can break the flow, because you end up kind of going to check the screen, coming back, and especially when you're doing a portrait, you kind of start to break up that relationship. But equally, when you, again, last week I was on assignment, and I took a rangefinder, an M10, and I was shooting with it, and it totally different to the way I would shoot if I was shooting on an SLR or on a mirrorless camera, in the sense that it slowed me right down. You start to really think about your compositions. You start to really think about your kind of waiting for the moment, because of it's simplifying everything.
Yeah.
And I do think that with digital, we can fall into the trap of kind of all the bells and whistles, and there's so much technical side of things that you've got half your brain engaged with that, and only half is left to deal with, probably less than half is left to deal with what's in front of you. And therefore the pictures kind of start to suffer. But it's this weird triangle, because at the same time you need the time to be able to approach it the way that you're approaching your Kindred Guardians, where you can watch a scene unfold and sit there for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, sometimes just waiting for the right thing to happen. That kind of slow journalism, the slow photojournalism, which we've started to lose a little bit, I think.
Yeah, we are. And also it's, even the way that people are viewing pictures. I'm hoping with my project, I'm asking people to commit to, 25 picture story, which is a lot. So I'm reaching a very small percentage of people that are willing to look into that. But I put so much thought, and while I'm shooting, before and during and even after, into the sequence of the story. I really like to build it like a director would build a movie. And so I try to think that way. And yeah, you are appealing to a small amount of people, but I love that art. I love that craft, and that's what I'm focusing on. I know it's a dying way art in a lot of ways, but I still love it, and the people that do appreciate it, I'm glad that when they give me feedback, it makes me happy. So I like that, and these stories, I'm really getting to meet people that inspire me, which is nice too. I mean, all the other stories and all the other work I've done for so many years is always someone else's. I don't have anything that I can like say from my heart is mine. So this has really been in a great way. That's why I always push to people like start a personal project and just do it, start it, get it going, get whatever you have. Like if you don't have a budget to go to another country, fine, find something in your backyard, find something with your neighborhood, but start a project that you can grow into, because it's so nice for me to be around these people. Each story I get so excited about, and I still do all my other work in between. And I've finally found, it took me a long time, but I finally found a nice balance between those two things. Just took me 10 years to get there.
Oh yeah, I can see that. It's definitely something that's I think. Do you find with the kind of audience that you have on social media, do you find that that's been helpful on this particular project in finding in getting suggestions from people? Have you had any feedback from people? Because to go back to the kind of the judging type of thing that you have on your Instagram, where you ask people, picture A, picture B. Have you ever been tempted to kind of say, choose your own adventure for Justin? Like, where shall I go next? Should I go cover A or should I cover B?
That could be that's a great idea. Maybe I'll follow that. I guess what's nice for me with this is
it's definitely an idea for a new show. I think they should be.
That would be a lot of fun. I have started to, I do get a lot of great feedback and a lot of story ideas on Instagram. I also find people, because this is a new world for me, the wildlife people and are all their own community, and they're a great community. And I go to them for like policing some of the stories. If I have a story idea, I'll ask some people I know on there that I know do the right things. I'll say, hey, is this organization, they help elephants, but what do you think? This is what they do. Should I do a story about them? And they'll say, well, not really, because look at the trail, look how they get there. So they really help me sniff out great stories and great people. I don't have to research as much as I did in the beginning. I had to look for my own stories. The other thing that's great is I don't care if the story gets published, so I don't have to look at it like, oh, this story, is it going to fit into the Washington Post? Is it going to get out there? All of it fits into the hero part of my project, which is wonderful. So if some stories don't have mass appeal or aren't going to get published, that's okay. For me, I like that. Some do, some don't. I'm also not sort of beholden to the editorial and sort of photography, that community anymore, which is nice because I don't do as many assignments for those publications. So I can kind of, if it's been done by this major magazine or by this famous photographer, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I can still do it. I'll still do it my way. It still fits into the grander project that I'm working on. So it's been kind of liberating in a lot of ways too. I don't have to think about competitions anymore. My commercial work is that, that's like, okay, that's where I'll make my money to do these projects. But that's been liberating, because that's a lot of pressure, I think, when you start off in photography. You end up becoming like part of this, the Eddie Adams system is also this other system of like American photography too, with like these different agencies and you have to different contests that you have to win. It's great. I don't care about that stuff anymore. It's just quite liberating.
Yeah.
I love getting this stuff published, but it's fine if it doesn't and the people get photos out of it. That's also great too. And I publish it by myself on my website now. So, and I do it over the course of a month. So I do one picture a day. I sequence it in the story. I sequence it in the order that I like to show the story, and then I let them do it on their Instagram. And it's just been a fun cycle for me. The whole process, I really enjoy it. Where it's like my assignment stuff, it's so dead. Once you give it to them, it's like not yours anymore, and you're done with it.
I do wonder if there's a new model there to be kind of found, in terms of producing stuff and being able to use the fact that now photographers can have their own global audiences, and whether or not there's a way to make that work in the same way that, say, successful YouTubers can get Patreon subscribers, or they can get advertising to actually help fund some of the stuff that they do. I do wonder whether or not there is a model to be made to work somewhere down the line. Someone will
I'm optimistic. Yeah, I think there will be. I'm trying to I'm personally trying to find different ways to bring attention to the project. So I will start embracing a little bit more video on the shoot, but I don't want to bring a lot of equipment because I'm trying to get away from that, as I said. So I'm going to try to do some more sort of like I'm going to have a GoPro and probably wear the GoPro while I'm doing some of these shoots, and then maybe have a journal to camera at the end of the day as I'm editing the photos, things like that, trying to find a new way to go about this. I'll try it. Like I try a lot of stuff like this. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I'm hoping to use that to bring attention to the story, to these individual stories. So I'll start that on my next project. I was just a little bit like, it was too much to try that on the other ones. I just felt like I really needed to focus. But after thinking it through and talking it through, I thought, well, that might be a better way to do it, because I'm not spending a day filming. I'm just going to shoot. I'm going to have video rolling, and then at the end of the day, I can do a little like diary, basically, video diary.
So if our listeners want to see any of this work, where can they go to find it?
Everything's on my website, justinmott.com, JUSTINMOTT. And on my Instagram is askmott, ASKMOTT. That's where I kind of keep most of my work.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, we normally end our kind of podcast by asking our guests 2 questions, which are not very original, but basically your desert island camera.
Not very original. We full on, we just lifted them straight up.
Maybe we should like integrate the Desert Island Discs theme tune. I mean, I'm sure Justin probably isn't that familiar with Desert Island Discs, seeing as it's a Radio 4 show. But
I just think there may be a copyright issue there.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, so your Desert Island photo book and your Desert Island camera.
Oh, all right. Well, okay. So I thought about this. You know, your first reaction you'd probably just want your camera phone, because you could send photos and you could still update your Instagram. But I think I would go my favorite photo. I'll be maybe a little more original. My favorite camera. I will stick with my M10D. I love it, and my 35 millimeter. I think I could accomplish everything I need to. And then when I'm rescued from that desert island, I'll have all these images that I never got to see. And so I'll see if I can, I'll have it'll be like reliving it all over again. Although I don't know, it might be a horrible experience. I might not want to relive it, but I'll have all those photos that I'll never be able to look at. They'll all be fresh when I get off that island. So I'll go with my Leica M10D. So Leica will be happy that I said that.
What's your lens of choice on that? Is it
my 35-1.4? I love that lens.
The Lux. Very
nice. I love it. I absolutely love it. I don't know if there's anything else practical. People probably give you guys really creative answers, like a camera that can also, use to like scoop out stuff, or that's durable or something.
No, you're literally the first person. You're the first person who thought of that.
Yeah.
Like when you said phone, I was thinking he's going to say, because I could probably then phone for help and get off the bloody island. But
I don't want to be that literal. Maybe I'm meant to be there on that island. Maybe there's an animal I can photograph for a couple months.
That's your destiny, right?
Yes. Yeah. Although, and the light, it's quite a beefy camera too. So if I needed to fight something off, I think I could really do some damage with it.
There we go. You'd probably use it to dig a hole. You'd be sorted.
Right. Use a lens hood there. I've got something
there. That's it. I actually had
electronics.
I had the MD262, so the first version of it. So, well, not the first version, because obviously they created the Audi design version. Did you ever see that?
No, I didn't. No.
I think it was Audi design. It was limited to a certain number of sets. It was like 20,000. And it was this stunning. But it had like this. Oh man, I could wax lyrical about this. It was like one of the coolest looking things ever. And I was like, I will buy that when they bring out something that's not 20 grand. And then they brought out the MD262, and I was like, oh, I'll have it. So I bought it, and then I had the Summilux 1.4, right? And obviously, you are a better photographer than I am. I could not land. Well, I couldn't land focus, and then because the MD262 didn't have Wi-Fi built in, I couldn't then check.
Oh, yeah.
So I would then get back, and I'd be like, oh, god damn.
I did worry when I got that camera, but I'm going to knock on wood with that. I really have I've been blessed my entire life with great eyesight, and I hope that doesn't change. But I had really good eyesight. I'm the guy when I go to the doctors that after they're done and you pass, I tell them to keep going farther to see if I can. That's pretty cocky. Right. I would do that. That's the kind of thing I would do. Like, keep going. What else do we got here? I'm losing it as I get older, 100%. But it was very good in my 30s.
Well, I got told years ago that I had fighter pilot vision. And I was like, damn, that's super cool, right? And then I went for an eye test. And if you're a photographer, obviously you should go and get your eyes tested. And I went, I said, look, do I still have fighter pilot vision? They said, well, yeah, if you're a retired fighter pilot. I was like, oh,
love it,
right,
love it.
Great.
I burnt my eye once. I burnt my cornea.
Your eye.
I burned my cornea photographing. This is a little lesson to any of your listeners. I was photographing welding without protective eyewear and looking at welding for that long. I had no idea. Yeah. Even the people that were doing it. I was early on in my career, and it's a very weird delayed thing. It like about an hour later, it just started burning, and the next morning I couldn't open my eye.
Whoa.
And then it was funny. I had to wear a patch for a little bit, and people were funny. People like, really, when you're a photographer, people say like, oh God, it must be so bad for you not to be able to see. I'm like, it's kind of bad for everyone. Like, it's not just me as a photographer, but people are really sympathetic to you. Like, oh yeah, but for you, I'm like, no, there's not much that it's great for. It's not. It's a pretty bad situation if you have
That's
any of us.
right.
But thank you.
Hard to see any advantages. No pun intended.
Right. So it took like 24 hours. So if you take away one thing from today's podcast, wear protective eyewear if you're ever photographing welding.
See, I was photographing welding yesterday, and I wish we'd had this chat last week.
The sparks going, and it was commercial shoot, so I was like really looking at it a ton, and I wasn't wearing.
So that was MIG welding. So I was photographing TIG welding. So it's very different type. No sparks.
Tom, this isn't a welding podcast.
Let's get on.
Book. Okay.
Let's do a huge great arc. Nah, welding gag for you. Back to the book.
I would say I have so many books. I have a great library built up in Vietnam, which I'm proud of because I always have to lug these photo books back because there's not great bookstores in Vietnam. So I picked them up in Japan and friends coming to the US. But one of my favorite books, it's kind of a classic, and I think I'd want that book on the island because it would just be fun to be able to, I'd be so bored and want to see the rest of the world, would be Salgado's Genesis. I love that book. I just love how everything about it and just it's so different than the kind of work I do, and he's so amazing. And I don't know. I just think I could flip through that book for days upon days upon days.
Which you would have being on the island,
right? So I'd have time, and that's what I would look at.
I mean, it's pretty global coverage in that book. You'd probably find the island that you're
on. Right. I know. I probably would.
You turn around and Salgado would be there, and you'd be like, "Oh!"
I'm a huge James Nachtwey fan, but I think I would be so depressed looking at his work all the time on the island. So I don't think I'd like one of his books.
Inferno is a beautiful book, but my God,
I have it upstairs, and every time I have his book, and I have like a pile. I have like one of those whiskey shelves, and people just open it up and drink. So if you guys ever come to Hanoi, we'll get a nice whiskey buzz and be depressed together.
Done deal.
Look at Nachtwey and weep. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dustin, for giving us the time. Obviously, I know it's very different time of day over there in Hanoi.
Time for the whiskey.
Yeah, it probably is about whiskey time for you.
Just about, yeah.
And thank you again very much for coming on. And I'm sure that the listeners will have gained some absolute gems of information from that. And
I hope so. I appreciate it, guys. Really, thank you for having me on. Sorry, I yap a lot. Once you get me going, I can't shut up.
No, it's good.
Part of my TV show, Bad Habits.
Well, thank you again, and
thank you, guys.
Best of luck with Kindred Guardians. I look forward to seeing the book.
So thank you so much for tuning in this week. We really hope you enjoyed the episode. If you'd like to know more about today's guest and to read the show notes that we've carefully and lovingly prepared for you, it's over on the website at exposednegative.com, and you can find us on Instagram at xnegative. So that is EX negative. And we will see you all next week.